Skull Nation, lean in because something massive is brewing in Minnesota, and it's not the kind of story you hear every day. It's the kind of moment that tests a franchise's resolve, shakes the faith of a fan base, and leaves even the most loyal believers asking themselves one burning question. Are we truly ready for September 8th at Soldier Field? The truth is brutal. One of our most electric young playmakers won't even be on the field for the first 3 games. A dynamic weapon we hoped would stretch defenses all year long, gone for the season after a devastating knee injury. Our franchise cornerstone, our superstar who carries the hopes of this entire fan base, has been nursing a tendon issue that makes every training rep feel like a gamble. And just when you think that's enough drama, another young wideout struggles through an inconsistent camp while battling a hand injury that refuses to fully heal. It's chaos. It's frustration. It's the NFL at its most unforgiving, but it's also opportunity because when the storm hits, you find out who you really are. You find out who's ready to step into the fire and carry the weight when others fall. And that's exactly where the Minnesota Vikings stand right now, staring down uncertainty, but also staring down destiny. There are veterans still on the market, men with resumes carved out over years of battles, names that once electrified stadiums and might still have enough in the tank to tilt a game. There are underdogs in purple and gold uniforms clawing for respect, ready to prove that their names belong in the same breath as the stars. And there are stories unfolding within this team that go beyond the box score. Moments of courage, pride, and defiance that show us what it truly means to wear Vikings colors. So ask yourself, SKL Nation, are you ready to see which of these stories becomes the spark that changes everything? Because over the next few minutes, we're pulling back the curtain on 5 revelations that could define this entire season. From possible free agent saviors to Super Bowl legends, from quarterbacks nobody believed in to voices that rise above hate, and finally to one forgotten weapon who might just reignite his career here in Minnesota. The clock is ticking. The opener against Chicago looms, and the first chapter begins now, with the calm, steady presence of a veteran receiver who just might be the answer to this storm. Picture this, Escort Nation. The season hasn't even started, and already the Vikings are walking a tightrope without a net. Suspensions, injuries, inconsistency in camp. The wide receiver room, once thought to be a fortress, suddenly feels like it's built on shifting sand. And when you're staring down the barrel of opening day at Soldier Field with playoff expectations, there's no time to hesitate. You need a lifeline. You need stability. You need someone who knows what it takes to move the chains when the lights are blinding and the moment feels suffocating. Enter Tyler Boyd. For nearly a decade, Boyd has been one of the NFL's most quietly reliable receivers. He isn't the flashiest. He doesn't dominate highlight reels with circus catches or 70-yard bombs. But ask any defensive coordinator who's faced him and they'll tell you, ignore Boyd at your own risk. From 2016 through 2022 in Cincinnati, he was the definition of consistency. Over 800 yards in 3 straight seasons, multiple years with 70+ receptions, and a knack for finding space in the middle of the field when defenses were too busy worrying about bigger names around him. He was the glue guy in an offense loaded with stars. The man who punished defenses when they tried to take away Jamar Chase or T. Higgins. Last season in Tennessee, the numbers dipped, his lowest receptions and yardage since his 2nd year in the league. Critics immediately wrote him off. He's slowing down. He's done. But let's be honest here, was that about Boyd or was that about the chaos of the Titans offense? Will Levis, a rookie still learning the speed of the NFL, was throwing behind a shaky line with limited weapons around him. It was an offense struggling for identity, and Boyd was collateral damage. Strip away the noise, and you still see the same receiver who knows how to separate, who runs sharp routes, and who has reliable hands in traffic. And here's where it gets really interesting for Minnesota. Boyd's background fits perfectly into Kevin O'Connell's system. Remember, Boyd spent his prime years in Zach Taylor's Bengals offense, a scheme directly tied to the Sean McVay coaching tree. And who runs the Vikings? Kevin O'Connell, another disciple of McVay. The language, the concepts, the route combinations, they're cousins in design. That means Boyd wouldn't be walking into a foreign system. He'd be walking into something familiar, something he's already proven he can thrive in. That kind of seamless transition is rare in free agency. Now ask yourself, how valuable would that be for the Vikings in Week 1? When Jordan Addison is suspended, Rondale Moore is sidelined for the year, and Justin Jefferson, though expected to return, is still working back from attendance scare. You need someone who won't flinch under pressure. Jalen Naylor's hand injury only deepens the uncertainty. Imagine Boyd lining up in purple, giving Kirk Cousins, or whichever QB holds the reins, a trusted target who can consistently move the chains on 3rd and 6, who knows how to find soft spots in zone, who provides a veteran voice in a locker room suddenly filled with question marks. It's not a glamorous move. It's not the kind of headline that sends shockwaves through the NFL. But sometimes the most important moves are the quiet ones. Tyler Boyd wouldn't be asked to be WR1 or even WR2. He'd be asked to steady the ship, to give the Vikings reliability while Jefferson regains full form and Addison returns from suspension. He'd be the calm in the storm, the veteran who knows his role and plays it with precision. And Skull Nation, don't underestimate the impact that kind of presence can have on a young, evolving offense. Football isn't just about stars. It's about trust, rhythm, and execution. Tyler Boyd brings all three. He's 31 in November, yes, but that's not a death sentence for a receiver who relies on savvy more than speed. Think of players like Larry Fitzgerald in his later years. Crafty, dependable, always where he needed to be. Boyd has that same DNA. So would you take him? Would you welcome that kind of steadying force into Minnesota right now, knowing the uncertainty surrounding this roster? Because while some fans dream of splashier names, sometimes the smartest path forward is the one that guarantees stability. Tyler Boyd may not change the headlines, but he could change the season. And yet, as steady as Boyd might be, there's another name out there. A name that carries star power, championship pedigree, and a legacy that still makes defenses sweat. He's older now, sure. He hasn't been the same explosive playmaker in years. But when you mention his name, every fan in the NFL knows exactly who you're talking about. Because the next potential savior for this Vikings receiver room isn't just reliable, he's a legend. And his story in purple could be the most emotional twist of all. There's a certain electricity that runs through the NFL when his name is mentioned. You know exactly who I mean, Skull Nation. A player who once turned a single-handed catch into a cultural phenomenon. A player whose swagger, intensity, and talent once made him the most feared wide receiver in the league. He's 32 now, approaching 33 this November, and the whispers around the NFL are the same. Is there still magic left in the hands of Odell Beckham Jr.? For Minnesota, the question isn't whether OBJ can be the unstoppable superstar he was in New York. It's whether he can still be the difference maker this offense desperately needs. And here's where the story gets fascinating, because Beckham isn't just a random name on the free agent market. He has history with Kevin O'Connell, real history. Cast your mind back to 2021. The Rams, chasing a Super Bowl, pulled the trigger and brought Beckham into Sean McVay's system. O'Connell was the offensive coordinator. The fit wasn't just good, it was perfect. OBJ immediately slotted in as a key weapon, producing 5 touchdowns in the regular season despite learning the playbook on the fly. Then came the postseason, arguably his finest moment since the New York days. 2 touchdowns in the playoffs, including a critical performance in the NFC Championship and a first-half Super Bowl touchdown that had the Rams on their way to glory, until fate struck cruelly with a torn ACL. That's the last time Beckham was truly himself. The past few years have been marked by rehab, setbacks, and flashes rather than fireworks. His 2022 season was wiped out entirely. His 2023 stint in Baltimore was respectable, but far from dominant. 35 receptions, 565 yards, 3 touchdowns. Decent, yes. Explosive, no. And now, as he stares down his mid-30s, OBJ is no longer the guy you build a passing game around, and this is a massive but, he doesn't have to be in Minnesota. Think about it. With Justin Jefferson commanding double teams, Jordan Addison ready to ascend after his suspension, and TJ Hawkinson soaking up attention in the middle, OBJ could step into the perfect role. The savvy veteran who punishes defenses when they overcommit. He wouldn't need to log 200 yards. He'd need to make 4 or 5 plays a game that tilt the balance. A clutch 3rd down grab, a red zone touchdown, A 25-yard sideline toe tap that reignites the stadium. That's the kind of contribution Beckham can still deliver. And the locker room impact? Say what you will about OBJ's fiery personality, but when he's bought in, teammates follow. He knows the system, he knows O'Connell's voice. He's lifted the Lombardi trophy in this very offense. That matters. That's not theory. That's proof. The risks, of course, are real. His injury history is extensive. The production hasn't been consistent in years. He'll be 33 by mid-season. Every signing has a cost, and Beckham isn't going to be cheap even now. But what's the cost of walking into week 1 with uncertainty at WR2 and WR3? What's the cost of watching defenses smother Jefferson? Because nobody else can win one-on-one consistently. And here's the truth, SKO Nation. Beckham's presence wouldn't just bring depth, it would bring belief. Can you imagine US Bank Stadium when number 13 jogs out in purple and gold? The roar would be deafening. Fans would feel that jolt of adrenaline, that sense that maybe, just maybe, destiny is aligning again. Beckham has always been bigger than stats. He's been about moments, about energy, about lighting a spark when hope feels dim. So here's the gamble. Do you trust the steady hands of Tyler Boyd, or do you roll the dice on the flash of Odell Beckham Jr.? Both bring experience, both bring answers, but OBJ carries something more. The possibility of magic, the kind of spark that can flip a season on its head. And yet, as much as the spotlight shines on these veterans, there's another story brewing in Minnesota. One that doesn't come with millions of dollars in contracts or Super Bowl rings. One that comes from grit, determination, and a rookie nobody expected to even make the roster. Because while the league debates OBJ's future, a young quarterback named Max Brosmer is fighting for something bigger than headlines. He's fighting for a place in this league. Every NFL season has its underdog story. A player who wasn't supposed to make the roster, wasn't supposed to get a shot, wasn't supposed to belong, and yet through sheer grit and performance, forces everyone to take notice. For the Minnesota Vikings in 2025, that story is beginning to sound like it belongs to Max Brosmer. Now, let's be real. All nation. Undrafted free agent quarterbacks almost never make headlines. They're camp arms, practice squad bodies, placeholders until the preseason ends. But Brosmer? He's been rewriting that script since the moment he stepped onto the field. And if you've been paying attention this August, you know exactly why the buzz is growing louder with every rep. Against New England in the second preseason game, he got an entire half to prove himself. It wasn't perfect. How could it be behind a patchwork line without Jefferson, Addison, or Hawkinson at his disposal? But what stood out wasn't the stat sheet. It was his command, his anticipation, his ability to throw to a spot before the receiver even broke his route. Kevin O'Connell himself couldn't hide his admiration during the broadcast, praising Brosmer's fast eyes and his knack for keeping the ball out of harm's way even under duress. After the game, O'Connell doubled down, calling him unique in how quickly he processes the field. That's not normal praise for a rookie UDFA. That's the kind of language that hints at real belief. And think about the comparison O'Connell himself invited. Brock Purdy. Nobody saw Purdy coming either. A late-round pick turned franchise quarterback because he landed in the right system with the right coach. Talent matters, sure, but fit amplifies everything. In Minnesota's offense, rooted in timing, anticipation, and quick reads, Brosmer's skill set feels tailor-made. He doesn't have to be a rocket-armed gunslinger. He has to be decisive, accurate, and fearless. So far, he's checking every box. Of course, we have to be cautious. Preseason darlings fade all the time. Tyson Bagent did it just last year in Chicago, going from D-do nobody to start in 4 games. But even that story proves the point. Opportunity matters, and sometimes an undrafted kid can seize it if the stars align. Brosmer isn't playing for headlines right now, he's playing for trust. Trust from O'Connell, trust from his teammates, trust from a fan base hungry for something to believe in beyond the usual names. And let's not underestimate the psychology of this. When your wide receiver room is battered, when uncertainty clouds the opening of the season, a story like Brosmer's can lift an entire locker room. Teammates see the work ethic, the calm under pressure, the willingness to stand in the pocket on 4th and 17 and deliver a strike. That inspires. That reminds veterans why they fell in love with the game in the first place. Now, does this mean Brosmer is going to be QB2 in September? Maybe, maybe not. The competition remains open with Brett Rypien and Sam Howell still in the mix. But every day, every rep, every drive in preseason, he's making it harder for coaches to ignore him. And even if he opens the season as QB3, his trajectory already feels different. He's not a camp arm anymore. He's a quarterback who belongs. And Skull Nation, let me ask you, what's more inspiring than that? In a league dominated by stars and million-dollar contracts, the undrafted kid with nothing guaranteed is stealing the show. Maybe he never becomes a starter. Maybe he never touches the field in a regular season game. But right now he's proven that heart, anticipation, and fit can still defy the odds. So as the spotlight shines on Boyd and Beckham, don't forget the rookie quietly carving his name into this team's story. Max Brosmer might not sell jerseys yet. He might not dominate highlight reels. But in a season already filled with uncertainty, he represents something priceless. Hope. And speaking of hope, sometimes it takes more than what happens on the field to define a team's character. Sometimes it's about courage in the face of hate, pride in the face of bigotry, and standing tall when the world tries to push you down. That's exactly the story unfolding with two Vikings cheerleaders who have faced criticism for simply being themselves. Football is about more than touchdowns and tackles. It's about community, identity, and the courage to stand for something bigger than the scoreboard. And this year in Minnesota, two new faces on the sidelines have reminded everyone that being part of the Vikings family is about more than wearing purple on Sundays. It's about pride, it's about resilience, and it's about refusing to let hate define who you are. Blaze Sheik and Louis Kahn, the newest members of the Vikings cheerleading squad, didn't just earn their spots. They fought for them. A grueling audition process, weeks of training, interviews, and performances under pressure. It wasn't handed to them, it was earned. And when their names were called, they became history. Two male cheerleaders stepping onto a stage traditionally dominated by women. For them, it was a dream realized. For some, unfortunately, it became an excuse to spread hate. Social media lit up, but not with the celebration they deserved. Instead, waves of homophobic slurs, disrespect, and even threats poured in. Among the loudest voices, former NFL wide receiver Antonio Brown, who fueled the fire with offensive language and mockery. Suddenly, what should have been a moment of triumph became a spotlight of cruelty. But here's where this story flips, because Sheik and Khan didn't back down. They answered with pride. Wait, did someone say our name? Sheik posted, standing side by side with Khan in their uniforms, defiant and smiling. It wasn't just a clapback, it was a statement, a reminder that they weren't going anywhere, that they belonged. And behind them, the Vikings organization stood tall. A formal statement backed them up, not only defending Sheik and Khan, but reminding everyone that male cheerleaders are far from unusual. 1/3 of NFL teams now have them. They have deep backgrounds in dance. They survive the same rigorous process as anyone else, and they elevate the game day experience with talent, passion, and dedication. This is where Skull Nation has a choice. Do we let hate dictate the narrative, or do we embrace what it truly means to be Vikings? Because Vikings are warriors. Vikings are family. Vikings don't run from storms. They fight through them. And what Sheik and Khan are doing isn't just cheering on the sidelines. It's proving that courage in the face of adversity is just as inspiring as any comeback win on the field. Yes, some so-called fans threatened to cancel season tickets. But guess what? Not one of them actually did, because deep down, even the loudest critics know what this team stands for. This is bigger than football. This is about saying, if you're talented, if you're passionate, if you're willing to give everything to represent the purple and gold, then you belong here. Period. So when you see Sheik and Khan on the sidelines this season, don't just see cheerleaders, see resilience, see pride, see the spirit of Minnesota refusing to bow to bigotry. And they may not score touchdowns, but they've already won something far more important, the battle to be themselves in the face of hate. And here's the question, Skull Nation. Isn't that what this franchise has always been about? Believing when nobody else does. Standing tall when the odds are against you. Fighting for every inch, whether on the field or in life. That's Viking football. That's Viking family. But as powerful as this story is, we're still left with the burning question that started all of this. Who will step up to catch passes in September? We've talked about steady hands in Tyler Boyd. We've talked about the star power of Odell Beckham Jr. We've talked about the hope of Max Brosmer and the pride of Sheik and Khan. But there's still one more name, one more possibility who could reignite his career in Minnesota and give this team exactly what it needs. And his name is Gabe Davis. And so here we are, it's called Nation. After all the ups and downs, after the suspensions, the injuries, the veterans on the market, the underdog quarterback, and even the courage of those off the field, it comes down to this. One final name. A player who's already shown flashes of brilliance in this league. A player who once struck fear into secondaries across the AFC. A player who, if healthy, could completely change the equation in Minnesota. Gabe Davis. At just 26 years old, Davis is still in the prime of his career. This isn't a veteran clinging to the last year's irrelevance. This is a receiver who's already proven he can be a touchdown machine. Vikings fans don't need to be reminded of his highlight reel from Buffalo. 27 touchdowns across 4 seasons, including those unforgettable playoff explosions where he looked unstoppable. He was strong, explosive, and reliable when the lights were the brightest. That kind of production doesn't just vanish, but then came 2024, Jacksonville. A nightmare season defined not by ability, but by pain. Davis tried to battle through a torn meniscus, refusing to sit while his body betrayed him. The result? His worst season as a pro, just 20 receptions, 239 yards, and 2 touchdowns before the injury finally forced him to shut it down. For some fans, that's all they see, decline. For others, it's context. Because when you play through pain, you don't look like yourself. And if Davis can return fully healthy, the upside is enormous. Now picture him in Minnesota, Justin Jefferson drawing double coverage, Jordan Addison, after his suspension, carving up defenders with his speed and precision, TJ Hawkinson controlling the middle of the field, and then Gabe Davis lining up as a WR3, feasting on single coverage, using that physicality and red zone ability to punish defenses that simply can't cover everyone. He doesn't need 200 yards here. He needs to score. He needs to move the chains. He needs to bring that spark that says every time he lines up, you better account for him. Would it be a gamble? Absolutely. 1 year prove it deals always are. But think of the upside. Davis regains form, produces behind Jefferson and Addison, and suddenly his career is reborn. He cashes in next offseason with a big contract somewhere else. And in the meantime, the Vikings get the benefit of his hunger, his fire, his desperation to prove himself all over again. That's not just depth, that's dangerous. And it fits the theme of this entire Vikings offseason, doesn't it? Nothing has come easy. Nothing has been guaranteed. From Jefferson's tendon scare to Addison's suspension, from Naylor's injury to the search for reliable answers, this team has lived in uncertainty. But time and time again, opportunity rises from chaos. Tyler Boyd could steady the storm. Odell Beckham Jr. could bring back the spark. Max Brosmer shows that even the overlooked can shine. Blaze Sheik and Louis Kahn remind us that pride and courage extend beyond the gridiron. And Gabe Davis? He represents the gamble, the kind of move that could pay off in touchdowns, wins, and momentum. So let me ask you, Skull Nation, would you take that chance? Would you roll the dice on Gabe Davis and believe that his best football is still ahead? Because make no mistake, the season opener is coming fast, and decisions have to be made. The Bears await at Soldier Field. The division is wide open. The NFC is unforgiving. And every single move from here could be the difference between another year of heartbreak and a season that shocks the league. This is the Minnesota Vikings. Drama is nothing new. Uncertainty is nothing new. But neither is resilience. Neither is fire. Neither is the ability to rise when the world counts you out. That's our DNA. That's our story. So if you believe in this team, if you believe in Jefferson's comeback, in Addison's rise, in O'Connell's vision, in the courage of every player and every fan who wears purple, then stand tall. Like, comment, subscribe, and join this journey with us, because this season is about more than football. It's about defiance, it's about identity, and it's about proving that when you doubt the Vikings, you regret it. And here's the kicker, this might not even be the final move. Whispers around the league suggest one more shocking possibility could be on the horizon. One more decision that could flip the entire NFC North upside down. But that's a story for the next video.